Welcome to Leaders in the Arena. My name is Jenny Whitener, and I'm the CEO of Bridge Innovate. And for over 20 years, Bridge Innovate has partnered with leaders to solve problems and simultaneously build their leadership capabilities. This series is designed to share valuable insights and lessons with our clients and key leaders in our communities to share their inspiration for all of us as leaders in the arena. Here at Bridge Innovate, we're constantly focused on empowering teams to lead, think, and problem solve differently. And we're thrilled that our guests here at Leaders in the Arena help us to do that every day. So today, we're very excited about a very special guest that we have with us, Julia Wright. Julia is the Executive Director of the American Red Cross, and she's going to be talking to us about community mobilization, how the Red Cross ignites a community response after a disaster. And so as you're listening to our conversation today with Julia, please feel free to join into the chat, introduce yourself. If you have questions throughout today's session, feel free to post those in the chat. And if we have time later in the program, we'll bring those to Julia to answer. So without further ado, let's get started. Julia, just a bit about yourself. I see that from our discussions and from your bio in LinkedIn, 25 amazing years with the American Red Cross. How exciting, and congratulations, and I should say thank you for your amazing service to our community through the American Red Cross. And I see that for the last 10 years, almost 11 now, you have been Executive Director for Southeast Tennessee for the American Red Cross. So thank you so much for being here today, and share with everybody a little bit more about yourself so they'll get to know you.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. This is a great opportunity for me to meet new people and get out in the community and share my passion for the Red Cross. And just a little bit about me. I have been with the Red Cross 25 years. Some days it seems that way, but most days it doesn't. One thing that I've learned is that you don't stop learning. There's always opportunities to learn new things. And an organization like the American Red Cross, things are always changing. So it makes it a very exciting career to keep up with all the latest things and really learn from everything you've done in the past to continuously improve what you're doing. Personally, I live here in the Chattanooga area. I have one daughter who is, my world. And she is now out in the work world and has been for some time now. So just very proud of my little family, and really just love meeting new people. That's one of the things that I love about my job the most, is that I get to meet a lot of people from all walks of life, from you name it. And I have met some really interesting people over the years and had opportunities to meet people that I never would have thought that I would be in the same room with. So it's amazing. It's been an amazing journey so far.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks so much for being here, and thanks for telling everyone a bit more about yourself. Let's just start at the beginning. So tell us a little bit more for those. I'm sure most everybody knows the American Red Cross. It's a legend in our communities, but talk to us a little bit more about the American Red Cross and its role in natural disaster response.
So most people don't realize that every 8 minutes, the American Red Cross responds to a disaster that's ranging anything from a house fire to a large-scale hurricane or wildfire. So by the time we finish this podcast, we'll probably have responded to 4 additional disasters somewhere in this country. So that's a big lift for an organization to constantly be helping folks in their most difficult times. And with emergencies and conflicts happening more often and hitting harder, the Red Cross in our communities are constantly in response mode. As disasters become more frequent and more intense, we're launching about twice as many disaster relief operations for major disasters than we did just a decade ago. So I have lived through my career seeing those large increases. But at the end of the day, a disaster, whether it's a single family fire or if it's a large disaster, the impact it has on the individual family is the same. It's devastating, and there's a lot of things that they're going to need to start their recovery and response and to deal with the crisis at hand. So we do play a crucial role in response to natural disasters. That includes things like providing food and shelter, water, comfort. We provide comfort kits, items for the families to have a little something that they can hang on to after disasters. But we also provide health services and mental health support to people after a disaster, which sometimes can be just as important as the physical items that we provide. And one of the things that many people may not realize we do is we reconnect family members who have been separated. So that can be anything from during a disaster or even during war. We have some reunification services that we provide for families when they've been separated. So that's kind of where we are as far as what we do. And but here's one of the things that I think people need to understand is before a disaster, we also focus on things to try to help our community. So we focus on preparedness, whether that be offering training and resources to help communities to be ready for potential disasters, or pre-identifying our own plans, building shelter teams, finding shelter locations, training volunteers, and working with our emergency management agencies and elected officials to make sure each of the communities we serve is prepared if a disaster happens in their community.
Mhm. Amazing.
Yeah. So, this work requires some strategic leadership, mobilizing resources and coordinating across all sectors to deliver a really fast and effective relief. So, there's a lot of leadership needed within our organization. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of not just paid leaders, but also our volunteer leaders that help us to make sure that we're there when the time is needed.
Yeah. I mean, so much of what you're talking about, I'm glad you're talking about the importance of connecting it back to leadership, because all the things you talked about, that when there's a crisis and the need to meet people kind of where they are, what their needs are, their comfort items, mental health support, reconnecting them with others that care for them. I'm like, gosh, shouldn't this just be for everyone, no matter what? It just is fundamental. And we're so thankful for you all at the Red Cross and all that you bring. One of the things as you talked about that, and I get the pictures in my mind of different disasters and many that happen every day, right? The importance of mobilizing the community, because it's not just alone that the Red Cross does their work. It's really connecting to the community. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're seeing with the aspects of describing community mobilization and how you guys do that?
So, mobilization starts with leadership. It's about inspiring action, building that trust, and creating a system that can withstand a crisis. And so that's a lot of the work we do is around building that leadership in our organization. But not only in our organization, community mobilization is also about empowering individuals and organizations outside of us to be prepared and to respond and recover from disasters. It's not just showing up after the storm. It's about building those resilient systems before it strikes and making sure that you have the tools in place when the time comes. This involves strengthening our local partnerships, our local network of organizations, everything from other nonprofits to our government partners, and even our corporate partners. We can enhance by enhancing our disaster preparedness and awareness and building and fostering community resilience. That makes each of us in a safer place in our community when a disaster happens. One of our probably greatest opportunities right now is to build that capacity, both internally and externally. Here in Southeast Tennessee, we have strong community leaders. We have strong responders. I watched one of a 10-year anniversary last night from Local 3 on the response that happened at the Naval Reserve Center. I think a lot of people are familiar with that. And just to see those responders, the caring, compassionate community, the citizens we have a lot going for us here in this community. And being able to leverage the people that we have in this community, whether it's our responders or our compassionate citizens, and leveraging that to serve as a force multiplier to ensure that our communities can better care for themselves in a time of crisis is really crucial.
It sounds great. I mean, when you're talking, as you know, at Bridge Innovate, we do work not only in the nonprofit sector with organizations like yours, but then also in the for-profit sector. And everything that you're talking about being ready for a disaster, it makes me think about the muscles that organizations built during COVID. When they faced, whether you are nonprofit or for profit,
Right.
everybody was facing a crisis. And I think these fundamental things that you talk about mobilizing a community is just the same as mobilizing a corporation. It's like mobilizing a group together. I love this concept of being prepared, anticipating, knowing what your response will be like, training, who are your partnerships, how will you engage them, how will that work, and then capacity. I love those three comments that you made. It made me even think about the current situation where many for-profit companies are being impacted by the tariffs, right? And so how do they get prepared? Or whether it's a natural disaster, which much of what you guys respond to. So these lessons that you're sharing with us are fantastic, and they're applicable to all of us as leaders in our community. So let's go further and talk more about the Red Cross. And because when you talked about community mobilization, you talked about partnership. But the other thing that I know that is really important is volunteerism. So talk about volunteerism and how you guys mobilize that, and what does that look like for the American Red Cross?
Yeah, so for us, volunteerism is a leadership pipeline. Red Cross invests in training and empowering our volunteers to lead in their communities. Over 90% of the Red Cross disaster workers are made up of volunteers. So we really depend heavily on our volunteer leadership to really move us during a disaster and to be that response in the community. So these individuals, they're trained, they're embedded in the community, they're ready to respond at a moment's notice. And that's important. And one of the really important things that I find is that local knowledge and local impact. Volunteers often live in the communities they serve. And when they live in those communities, they bring critical knowledge and a cultural understanding that is invaluable to our disaster response efforts. So that goes back into that community mobilization of having mobilization is about not just our partners, not just our community members, but also making sure we have volunteers that are from the community and in the community that understand the community. And so we provide extensive training to our volunteers, everything from disaster preparedness, psychological first aid training. We provide the emergency shelter training so they know how to operate a shelter, feeding, logistics, just an array of training opportunities to carry on a role during a disaster. Because during a disaster, when we set up, we start building a table of organization. And so we depend on these volunteers to fill those roles. But some of the most important training I think that we provide for me is we provide training on how to provide compassionate care, helping families and individuals cope with a trauma or a loss. So we have a lot of work around how to really impact a family and really be compassionate. Sometimes all it takes is someone to just be there for someone who is experiencing something traumatic. And that's something that I think we can all learn from is sometimes you don't have to be able to fix all their problems. Sometimes you just need to be a listening ear, someone to provide comfort and provide hope. A lot of times when they see the Red Cross, there's this level of hope. It's like, I'm not in this alone. It's not just me. There's others that will walk alongside me so they can get me to the other side of this crisis. And they have knowledge of what to do next. And that's to me the thing that no matter what socioeconomic level you're in, when a disaster strikes, the first thing you think about is, now what? What do I do now? And so that's where our trained volunteers come in. They can come in and help guide them. It's like, hey, do you have a place to stay? It's amazing. I've been on some disasters before where I would ask a family where they were staying and they hesitated because in their mind, they still had their home and didn't realize until that moment when I asked that they had to make a plan of where they were going to sleep for the night. And that's where we could come in and guide them. Like, here's what we can provide. Here's how we can move you into, like the next level of thinking about what you need to do to get through today.
Mhm.
Really, a lot of times it is just getting through that first 24 hours, 72 hours. And then from there, then we work with them to really do a more longer term plan. But our volunteers, they provide everything from shelter, food, emotional support, recovery assistance. Often they're the first to arrive from the community outside of maybe the fire department and some of the emergency responders. And they're often the last to leave. So when the responders often go back, because they have to go back to get ready for their next response, a lot of times our volunteers are still there, and weeks and months and sometimes, even years after some large disasters, we're still in those communities working. So that's really important that we have strong volunteer base to help support that, especially considering we depend on 90% of our workforce for disaster response to be those volunteers. So it requires a lot of leadership. A lot of leadership from within our organization for the paid staff, but also our volunteers to bring those leadership skills and to develop their leadership skills. So it's a great opportunity for the community to realize that not only do you get to help someone by coming to the Red Cross and being a volunteer, but we're going to invest in you. We're going to provide you with training and resources and mentorship and the things that you need to improve your leadership as well.
Mhm. I love the power of what you're talking about is preparing volunteers, right? So
Mhm.
often we all think about organizations who reach out to volunteers and just say, sign up. When can you be there? And I'm sure that's just as important to you all at the Red Cross, but this commitment to prepare your volunteers, it feels like you're developing a long-term relationship by investing in that preparedness. And that's great, right? Because they're experienced now at volunteering and supporting you. They're trained and they develop a sense of pride and continuity with you. Is that true? Is that where you're headed with your volunteerism?
So we've always had that level of commitment from our volunteers. A lot of times they're the ones that will be working with what we call those spontaneous volunteers. So a disaster strikes and the community says, "Hey, I want to help. I've never done anything like this before." So we need both, right? So we need the folks who are trained and seasoned and have all that. They're the leaders that will help the others come in that maybe don't have the experience in volunteering in this kind of situation and help guide them through what needs to happen and make sure that they support them to have a positive experience as well. Because we want our clients to have a positive experience, but we also want our volunteers to have a positive experience. And we do that by making sure that they have the tools in place and the leadership and the mentorship to help them, even if they're just coming for the day. You mentioned Covenant College. We reached out to the city of Chattanooga and did an event on MLK Day this past year. And Covenant College students showed up, right? We didn't know who was coming. We just knew we had a partner that was going to send some folks. And our regular volunteers that had a little bit more experience in training, they were able to quickly present some training the day of the event that we were doing a sound the alarm, where we would go door to door and talk to folks about having their own preparedness plans. And so we just quickly did a little training for them and got them in there and give them that opportunity to serve the community. So it takes both. We need the masses that come in, sometimes those spontaneous volunteers. We call them, I guess, event-based volunteers. They come in when an event happens. But we also need the seasoned leaders to come in and lead these folks that may come in that have never volunteered ever anywhere, or may have never volunteered in or never experienced a disaster. And then also we have volunteers that we, what I call, they're our rapid deployers. So we have this large network of volunteers that when a disaster strikes, they may be put themselves as some availability to go to other communities and support as well. So that if that community doesn't have enough seasoned responders for a certain position, so we have different positions that they can hold. They can go in and help be some institutional knowledge to help build their volunteer teams to help support whether it's sheltering or feeding or bulk distribution or all the different things that we do.
Fantastic. I think this concept of really having these multiple levels of volunteers that have different experience, right? And then in the moment, you can activate training when you need to. Just in that story you just shared about an event where you had some college students, Covenant College students show up. Just even going back to the data that you shared, that 90% really kind of your workforce volunteers. And I think about organizations that might be struggling with how to mobilize volunteers. It feels like you guys are the best practice. Like if you want to know an organization that knows how to activate, train, mature, whatever volunteerism, look at what the Red Cross is doing, right? So that's pretty amazing. And I love the fact I had no idea that the level of support that comes through your work is so mobilized by volunteerism and how proficient you guys are of developing us as volunteers. So fantastic.
Yeah, we definitely have some amazing volunteers.
You do. When you think about responding to a natural disaster, volunteerism is one thing, but at the beginning, you talked about the importance of partnerships and collaboration. Can you talk about how you engage in partnerships through collaboration in order to ensure you're ready for a response?
Yeah, so we collaborate with, hundreds of local nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and government agencies, and that can take form in whether it's a shelter partner, they may be a feeding partner. It may be that we find a partner that does feeding for us during a disaster. Organizations that can help with projects such as I just mentioned the Sound the Alarm, where we install smoke alarms. That's another way that we engage with partners. We work hand in hand also with our elected officials and government agencies to prepare and respond to disasters. I think a lot of folks may not realize that we're part of that overall national plan. We're actually the only nonprofit that typically is in the national response plan to respond to disasters across the, whether it's locally or across the country. But we work with them to prepare and respond to disasters, and it's a team effort. That's why we work closely with coordinating with these other organizations, whether it's through our VOAD or our local emergency management agencies, and we provide disaster relief aid to avoid duplicating services with other organizations as well. So we want to make sure that we're all being very conscientious of the resources can be limiting at times, and we want to maximize and work together to make sure that the people that need the resources are getting them in a timely manner, and that we're all working together towards the same goal, which is helping our community during crisis. So another great way we collaborate is through our blood program. So you may not realize that American Red Cross collects 40% of the nation's blood supply. And one of the ways we partner is through our blood drive hosts. So they play a really important role in our community on a regular day, but even during a disaster, because a lot of times those drives in another community may be disrupted. And if we're providing 40% of the nation's blood supply, you can imagine that that impacts the whole overall blood collection. We provide blood and blood products to disasters as well. So even if we're not in that community as a blood collector, we may be providing the blood into a community that's been impacted by a disaster. So we're really proud of our national inventory system that allows us to move blood across the country where it's needed and where it's needed. The Red Cross, we encourage people to be prepared should an emergency strike in their neighborhood. And part of that is being prepared to ensure that the nation has an adequate blood supply year round. So that's another piece of being prepared that a lot of folks don't realize that we're doing as an organization to make sure our country is, whether you're here in Chattanooga or if you're in South Florida or Texas or Louisiana, wherever, that we have the adequate supplies that we would need to support not just our own blood collection teams, but and services, but our partners in those
Right.
communities, because a lot of times we partner with other organizations that do that as well.
It makes me think that word prepare keeps coming to mind about how
Yes,
important that is to your operation, whether it's in blood supply or volunteerism with your collaborative partners, just being prepared so that you're ready and how proficient, how expert you guys are at that. The other thing that was very interesting when you talked about your partnerships and collaborating, many times we'll find people, or nonprofits talk about building a collaborative network and they'll build relationships. They might even talk about what you said, ensuring that we have a common goal. But this concept of overlap that you shared and really understanding how your partners connect to create a whole system of support, I thought was also very interesting how you described that, and something I think a lesson that we can learn from what you're doing at the Red Cross about having really strong collaborative partnerships. So fantastic.
absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic work there. When you think about this capability, this amazing capability that you all are bringing to our communities, talk about the kind of the key elements to success and what we should be understanding about that.
Yeah, so effective leaders evaluate, adapt, and improve. And that's something that we continue to be committed to learning and evolving and to meet the emerging needs. And that's, we've kind of talked about some of that throughout this conversation. But there's a few things that come to mind for me about what the key elements for success would look like. And it is those strong partnerships. So we've kind of talked quite a bit about our strong partnerships, whether that be with our elected officials, the fire departments, the fire departments, even, if they don't call us out, we may not know about a disaster that happens. Other nonprofits, and there's so many here in the Chattanooga area that do wonderful work, and we're so proud to be part of a network of nonprofits in this community that really cares about this community. But there's always a need to build additional relationships and find new ways to serve. So that's always something that we're looking at. There's some very interesting collaborations that can come from just learning about others. And so that's part of that, is just continuously trying to build those strong partnerships and building new partnerships. Be curious about what others do. And you may find that there's a lot of partnership opportunities that you never thought would solve a problem that you need to solve. And maybe you can help them solve their problems as well. So we offer a lot for partners, though. So one of the things that we offer is readyrating.org is a website where people can go in and they can put in their information. And that information, they can take it and put it and build an emergency action plan for their company. So we kind of talked a lot about that. And of course, we offer things like CPR and first aid and free smoke alarms to clients and things like that. And of course, opportunities to host blood drives. So there's a lot of things we do around that. And then also, one of the other things that I think is a key, it would be the trained volunteer base. We really talked about that a lot and how important they are. And I don't think we could ever talk about them enough to really talk about how important they are because we have some of the most compassionate and selfless volunteers. And with mobilization, that helps us more than anything we can do, is to make sure that we have a really strong volunteer base. And then this one it is last, but it is not least. It is probably one of my most important one, and that's a committed donor base. That fuels our mission. Our donors are our lifeline. There is no other non-government organization that responds to disasters at the size and scale that the Red Cross, and we depend on those donations from the American public to be ready and respond and recover every day and every 8 minutes.
Every
So
Amazing. It's just, when I hear of the great things that you're doing, I know the Red Cross is an amazing organization, and I'm so thankful that when I see a disaster, I see that Red Cross appearing in that community. So it's so wonderful, though, to hear you today, Julia, as a leader of the Southeast Division, to share kind of that leadership perspective and kind of the critical components that we all can think about when we're trying to mobilize around any kind of disaster, and to learn from you and to support you and your work and how important that is. So thank you so much today for joining us. It's been great to have you. And we wish you great success, right? And all your volunteers and all your partners, because we are thankful for the American Red Cross, and we're thankful for Julia Wright and what you do in our community. So thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, so thank you. We have a lot of other things coming up, and our Leaders in the Arena program at Bridge Innovate almost sold out. August 6th, Foundations of Artificial Intelligence and Design Thinking. So this is a kind of a preview of how Bridge Innovate is using generative AI in some of our design sprints and design thinking work. So feel free to jump in on that. I think there are a couple of extra seats left. And then August 20th, Tabitha Kapek talking about innovation with some communities that are the most vulnerable and how they are using the tools of innovation to solve their problems. Then coming up in September, Executive Vice President from Shaw Industries, Kevin O'Meara, talking with us about igniting transformation cultures and organizations. And then great work coming up later in the year with the Hidden Catalyst. Our good friend is coming to visit with us and talk more about what we're doing around group intelligence. So thank you all for joining us today. We hope to see you again at Leaders in the Arena. You can check us out at bridgeinnovate.com. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.